All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling one of the most critical, make-or-break stages of design thinking, the test phase. This is that moment where a promising idea has to finally confront reality to see if it can become a truly great solution.
You know the feeling, right? That little spark, that aha moment. You've spotted a problem, you've brainstormed like crazy, you might have even built a little prototype. You are absolutely convinced you've created something amazing, something people are just gonna love.
And here it is, the million-dollar question. An idea, well, that can live in your head, or on a whiteboard, or as a prototype. But a solution exists out in the real world, solving a real problem for real people. So how on earth do you get from one to the other?
Well, that brings us to what I like to call the moment of truth. The test phase is where your beautiful idea collides head-on with reality. It is the single most important reality check that stops promising concepts from turning into, expensive failures. The point isn't to prove you were right, it's to find out what is right.
Here's the thing you have to remember. Everything you've done up to this point, empathizing, defining, ideating, prototyping, it's all been based on assumptions. Now, they're probably educated assumptions for sure, but they're assumptions nonetheless. Testing is the bridge you have to build to get from your theory over to how it actually works in the real world. It's where you find out if that beautiful design of yours can, survive first contact with a real user.
So what do we really mean when we say testing in design thinking? Because it's a lot more than just asking people, hey, do you like my idea? It's actually a structured process of validating and evaluating your work.
At its absolute core, the test phase is about one thing: getting your prototype into the hands of your actual users. And your goal isn't to sell them on it, not at all. The goal is just to watch, to listen, and to learn. You're trying to validate your key assumptions and just gather that raw, unfiltered insight into how your solution really performs when you're not standing over their shoulder explaining it.
This really frames the central battle perfectly. See, on one side, you've got your assumptions, that perfectly crafted user journey, that interface you think is so intuitive. And on the other side, you've got user reality, which is the messy, unpredictable, sometimes totally bizarre way that people actually interact with your creation. Testing is simply the ring where these two meet.
Okay, so you're sold. You're ready to test. How do you actually do it? Well, you can't just throw your prototype out into the wild and hope for the best. You need the right tools to gather feedback that's actually meaningful and, more importantly, actionable.
And you've got a whole toolkit at your disposal. You might do some classic usability testing, where you just watch someone try to complete a task. Or maybe you'll run an A/B test to see which of two versions works better. In-person interviews are great because they let you dig in and ask why, while behavioral observation shows you what people do, not just what they say they do. And of course, online remote testing lets you get feedback from a much wider audience. The method you pick really just depends on what you're trying to learn. But look, gathering the feedback is only half the job. You have to capture it in a systematic way. A simple tool like this feedback capture grid is honestly invaluable. It forces you to organize all those little nuggets of insight into what worked, what was confusing, what new ideas popped up, and what questions people had. This simple grid stops great feedback from getting lost in the shuffle, and it makes it so much easier to analyze everything later on.
And this brings us to what might be the most important mindset shift of all. A lot of people see testing as the final step before you launch, right? The last checkbox. But in design thinking, nope, that couldn't be further from the truth. Testing isn't the finish line. It's the engine that powers iteration.
See, testing kicks off this amazing loop of improvement. You test your prototype, you gather feedback, you analyze that feedback, and then you refine your solution. So, for example, imagine your team is testing a new app. They see that users are struggling to find the save button. Okay, there's your feedback. They analyze it and realize, the icon is super confusing. So they refine it, they change the icon, and then what do? They test it again. And each time you go through this cycle, you get closer and closer to a solution that really works for people.
This whole process is built on that famous mantra, fail fast, learn quickly. The goal of testing is not to have a perfect run every time. The goal is to find the flaws in your idea as quickly and as cheaply as possible so you can learn from them and make it better. Honestly, every failure you find during a test is actually a massive win for the project in the long run.
So let's just zoom out for a second and look at the big picture here. How does this nitty-gritty process of testing and failing and refining, how does that actually lead to those big breakthrough innovations?
It's so important to remember this. Testing isn't just about checking a box or verifying what you've already built. It's not a final exam for your prototype. It is a process of discovery. It's really the beginning of a continuous conversation with your users. The insights you get from testing, they don't just help you fix problems. They spark entirely new ideas. They reveal unmet needs you didn't even know were there. They can push your solution in directions you never, ever could have imagined. This is how real user-centered innovation is born.
So I'll just leave you with this thought. The next time you're testing an idea and it doesn't quite go as planned, don't look at it as a setback. Look at it as a clue. Because what if that confusing feature or that moment of user frustration, that supposed failure, what if it's actually pointing you directly to your next, even greater idea? Thanks for joining me.